I'm going to show you how to mix Prime Attrax Coarse for your pole and your method feeder. So first thing to do is pop it in our bucket and just undo the bag. And then I'm going to pop our empty bag underneath our bucket so it doesn't blow away. Again, looking at it before you've added water, compared to our pole mix and our expander, just like our fine Attrax, the biggest thing that you notice is when you pick it up, initially it's quite heavy, and also you can feel it. You can feel the difference in the oil content compared to our expander based ground baits. So the biggest thing with this is little and often when you're adding your water. So a tiny bit to start with. Again, you can always add more with this mix, but it won't come back round if you overcook it and add too much water. So I'm just going to stir it around with my fingers. And again, just like our coarse carp, when you're stirring it around, it sounds like you're stirring gravel. But with this, just like our coarse carp, it's got those lovely big particles that the fish absolutely love eating. So you'll be able to see I've had a tiny amount of water to it, slightly changed colour, but the biggest thing is when I get it and squeeze it, you'll be able to see just how well it binds from that tiny amount of water. So at that state now, I'm just going to add a tiny little bit more, not a lot, literally a dribble, stir him around. Again, bearing in mind that we can always add more. So that's absolutely spot on, as in it's still loose, which is important. There's not no sort of big horrible wet lumps in there. It's still nice and loose, and I think that's the bit that you want. Sort of when you're rubbing it together, it's nice and loose, and now it's just a case of leaving it for sort of 10 minutes, letting it absorb that bit of water, and then I'm gonna pop it through me riddle. With this one, to be fair, you don't need to do it through a riddle, but it's always a good idea to run it through a coarse riddle if you've got them big lumps. If you haven't got any big lumps, you can just come back to it in 10 minutes like we're going to, and just finish it off with a tiny little bit more water. So say just leave it now for sort of 10 or 15 minutes, let that water do its thing, and then come back to it and we can get it ready for starting fishing. We've let our ground bait sit for literally 10 minutes and it's absolutely perfect. So if I hold it up, you'll be able to see there's no big lumps in it. And that's the biggest thing with this mix. You see, it's just all sort of individual particles, no need for a riddle, but I'm going to pop it for a riddle anyway, just to show you. But if I just grab our riddle and just pop it on, and that's what's nice with these coarser mixes, sort of coarse carp, coarse Attrax. You don't really need a riddle, to be honest, with them bigger, coarser particles. It just sort of stops it from clagging up, if that makes sense. And now it's just a case of giving it a stir around, and at this sort of consistency, if I hold it, for a dry mix for your method feeder, literally one nice hard squeeze, it's going to hold together. If I pop my bucket down just so I can show you, it's going to hold together, which that'll be our method, and you'll be able to see when I gently push it, just starts coming apart. So that would be a lovely quick breakdown mix for your method feeder. And this is why with these mixes I'd always much rather just keep them as that. That's my finished mix, and then I can tinker with it when I'm fishing. So if I wanted it to stick a little bit more around my method feeder, because I've got quite a bit of ground bait in there, I can sort of add, you know, a couple of nice dollops of water. Again, you've almost got to look at your ground baits like a sponge. They'll only take so much water before your ground bait starts to go all claggy. Now, I've dampened that up, and you'll be able to see I've, you know, squeezed it, but it's staying together a lot more. But again, when you rub it in between your hands, it's all come apart. So that's what I'd be looking to do when I'm fishing with my method feeder. Keep dampening it down as it dries out in the air and the sunlight. What this mix is brilliant for as well when it comes to your pole fishing, for them big carp fishing down the edge. So with this now, if I wanted to use it down the edge and not for my method, if I wanted to use it early on a method, then I'd use it. Then when it comes time to feed down the edge, then I'll dampen it down, rather than having one mix for the edge and one mix for your method feeder. So I'm just thinking, right, I want to start feeding down the edge in sort of 4 or 5 minutes time. So again, what I can do in the bucket is just add a little bit of water at a time. And what I'm going to try and do is add now as much water as I can before basically I'll ruin it. So it's still nice and loose there as I've added that bit of water. So again, a little bit more, not too much. Again, always go on that. You can always add a little bit more, but you can't take it out once you've put it in. Whereas now, when I'm mixing it, you can see it's sort of, if I pushed it, you know, to the side of the bucket, best way to sort of describe it now, it almost feels like wet sand. And that is getting to the sort of consistency now where that would be perfect to be able to feed nice and loose in the edge for them big carp. I wouldn't use this on my method feeder now because I've added that much water to it. When I squeeze it, it's almost gone like a bit of a paste, and that is never going to break down on your method feeder. So that's why I'd always much rather keep it on the dry side and tinker about in my bait box with it, because if I sort of slightly overcook it, I can just add a little bit of dry mix to it, stir it around, sort of spread that water out. But you see now it's going to take some rubbing before it comes back to our loose form ground bait. So that's the biggest tip I would say when it comes to using your Attrax, is always go less is more, and you can always add a little bit more as you're going. But rather than do it in your big bucket, unless you want to feed a volume of bait down the edge, I'd much rather just have my bait box on my side tray and just add little bits of water as I'm going. But that is how you mix coarse prime.